Many believe kidneys suffer damage primarily from salt intake or diabetes complications. However, the reality reveals something far more concerning. Your kidneys face daily assault from unexpected sources. These common items cause blockages, trigger inflammation, and chemically burn kidney tissue from within. The most alarming aspect? This deterioration progresses gradually and without pain until the situation becomes critical. Greetings, everyone. Today I'll discuss the 10 most damaging products for your kidney health. We'll work backward from number 10, saving the worst offender for last. Number 10. High-sodium packaged foods. These include canned soups, frozen meals, ready-made dinners, and fast food options. But here's what most people misunderstand. You've probably heard plenty of warnings about sodium and salt, but that's not the complete picture. The real issue is consuming all this sodium without accompanying potassium to create balance. When you consume sodium from processed items that lack potassium, sodium becomes problematic. Your kidneys must work significantly harder, increasing their workload. This leads to excess sodium accumulation, which causes fluid retention. Fluid retention elevates blood pressure, and elevated blood pressure creates additional friction that damages the tiny blood vessels and tubules in your kidneys. Here's the important part. Don't accept the blanket statement that salt harms you. Salt shouldn't frighten you. You can use generous amounts of salt, and actually, most people need more of it. However, you need potassium alongside it. Either use a well-balanced electrolyte supplement like Ulite, link provided below, or consume regular foods rich in potassium, plant-based foods, leafy greens, and non-starchy vegetables. Number 9. Coffee creamers. When you think about it, coffee creamer seems harmless, just something to soften your coffee's taste. But here's the shocking truth. Coffee creamers contain no actual cream. They're not dairy products at all. What goes into them instead? A long list of chemicals. They're highly artificial, similar to flavored syrups. The ingredients include emulsifiers, like titanium dioxide, that blend fat with water, plus artificial colorings and flavorings. Research shows these substances cause kidney membrane permeability. They compromise the structural integrity of kidney tissue, which can result in protein leakage, especially with prolonged consumption. Number 8. Alcohol. We all understand that excessive alcohol consumption causes harm. Alcohol creates dehydration, placing extra burden on your kidneys because they must function with less fluid available for filtration. It creates a toxic load throughout all tissues. Additionally, it promotes formation of something called uric acid, small, sharp crystals with glass-like spikes. These crystals are highly abrasive and damage tissues. Your kidneys must filter out this uric acid, and these crystals can also form kidney stones. When I rank alcohol at position 8, indicating there are far worse things, I'm referring to pure alcohol, distilled spirits in moderate amounts. But everything becomes significantly worse when we mix alcohol with other ingredients, which many people do. Mixed drinks now contain sugar, meaning fructose, which we'll discuss separately because it's particularly harmful. Artificial sweeteners also make everything much worse. We'll cover those separately too, along with artificial additives and other chemicals you're adding. Number 7. Green smoothies. This probably surprises most people, because you think of green smoothies as the pinnacle of healthy eating. That's what you make when you're on the right track and truly want to treat yourself to something nutritious. However, ingredients like spinach, almonds, and beets, which many people add to these smoothies, contain extremely high amounts of oxalates. If you make these green smoothies by loading them with spinach, and you do this daily, you may develop excessive oxalate levels. These oxalates can form crystals and stones in your kidneys. Now, I know what you're thinking. Many people who drink green smoothies get excellent results. Everything depends on how your body handles oxalates. Many different factors are involved because oxalates aren't necessarily harmful, but many people discuss them because many people react to them. Fundamentally, if your body can't handle oxalates effectively, they become problematic. First, you can break them down. Special bacteria exist for this purpose. If you have a very robust and diverse microbiome, you probably have something called Oxalobacter formigenes, which actually breaks down oxalates for you. When you break them down, you can't absorb them, so they don't become a problem for your intestines. They become a problem in the bloodstream, where they eventually form stones and crystals and reach the kidneys. Besides breaking them down, you can also bind them. If you have oxalates but also plenty of calcium and magnesium, these minerals can bind to the oxalates. When they're bound, you won't absorb them either, and they won't cause problems. Then there's something called citrate. Once you absorb them, citrate can be helpful because citrate can bind to them and prevent them from binding to calcium. If calcium binds in the intestines, that's beneficial because then we can flush them out. If they enter the bloodstream and calcium binds there, they can form crystals and stones that way. Once they're in the blood, that's problematic. But citric acid citrate acts as a decoy. It prevents oxalates from binding with calcium, resulting in fewer stones. So there are three main ways to handle them. Break them down, bind them in the intestines so they're flushed out or excreted through the intestines or kidneys, because once they enter the bloodstream, it's the kidneys that must filter this uric acid. Considering some factors that may affect your ability to process oxalates and the likelihood of oxalates causing harm. If you have low hydrochloric acid, low stomach acidity, you'll absorb less calcium and magnesium. You can't properly utilize them without stomach acid. If you have mineral deficiencies, if your diet lacks sufficient minerals, you also won't be able to bind oxalates properly. If you have a weak microbiome, if you lack good bacterial diversity in your intestines, you probably don't have the oxalobacter that can break down oxalates. If you have leaky gut syndrome, more oxalates will enter the bloodstream, even if they contacted some minerals, because now it's a larger complex. But with leaky gut syndrome, they can still enter the bloodstream. If you're dehydrated, more stone formation occurs. Oxalates will tend to crystallize more readily, increasing the kidney burden because they're harder to eliminate. If you're constipated, food stays longer in the intestines, and oxalates remain there longer, so you'll tend to absorb more. It's not just about oxalates being present in spinach. Multiple factors determine how well you handle them. Number 6. Artificial sweeteners. These are terrible for your kidneys. 3 in particular: aspartame, sucralose, and acesulfame potassium. They're found in thousands or tens of thousands of different food products. Aspartame, for example, breaks down into methanol, or wood alcohol, a substance that causes blindness, which further breaks down into formaldehyde, which we use for preservation, such as preserving biological specimens. It also breaks down into formic acid. Then there's sucralose, which disrupts renal tubule function, disturbing filtration and reabsorption function. The kidneys simply can't perform their job properly. Additionally, there's acesulfame potassium, which accumulates in kidney tissue and causes mitochondrial damage and oxidative stress. These substances are harmful in multiple ways, and furthermore, all three are directly toxic to kidney tissue. They directly break it down. Number 5. Processed meats. Very often we hear that protein harms the kidneys. That's not quite accurate. It's not the protein itself. Protein produces nitrogenous waste. Protein differs from fat or carbohydrates because it contains nitrogen, which becomes a waste product that the kidneys must filter. However, when we get it from real meat, from natural beef protein, it's not problematic. It can be if you practice something called rabbit starvation, when you eat nothing but extremely lean protein, consuming perhaps 340 grams of protein with almost nothing else. Now there's so much nitrogen waste with nothing to balance it that it becomes a kidney burden. But except for this extreme example, protein and nitrogen don't damage the kidneys unless combined with other risk factors. If you already have kidney problems, if you're dehydrated, if you have a metabolic disorder, then you may not be able to handle protein either. Under these circumstances, it may be wise to reduce protein intake slightly. But beyond that, kidneys need protein for repair. It's protein that becomes the tissue that heals. When we discuss processed meat, they add several additional factors that burden the kidneys heavily, such as phosphate preservatives. We have nitrates and nitrites, plus these advanced glycation end products, which are very abrasive for most tissue types. Overall, all this processed meat, these chemicals, and these artificial ingredients increase the acid load and increase calcification and scarring on the kidneys. Number 4. Phosphate-overloaded products. Phosphate isn't bad, but in processed products, especially items like processed cheese, those disgusting fake cheese slices put in hamburgers, sodas, frozen dinners, again, ready-made meals and fast food. Many of these phosphate preservatives are used. Phosphate isn't inherently bad. Calcium and phosphate are the minerals that make up most of your bones. However, their excess is bad, and imbalance is also bad. These inorganic phosphates we're discussing when talking about preservatives and food additives are unnatural. They're absorbed at 90%, whereas phosphates typically found in natural food are absorbed only at 30 to 40%. Humans have been around for a long time. We evolved, and other animals function in roughly the same way. We developed a balance. We developed the ability to digest only a certain amount, and there's probably a reason for that. We developed balance with nature, if you will. But when we intervene and change it, we get artificial compounds, inorganic phosphates. Now they act differently. There's a reason why we digest only 30 to 40%. When we have something we digest much more of, it becomes a burden. All these extra phosphates create problems because they accumulate in the kidneys, arteries, and bones. In bones, they're appropriate up to a point, until they disrupt the balance with calcium. Their content should be in a certain ratio, but they shouldn't accumulate in the kidneys and arteries. Those are soft tissues. What's happening in the kidneys now is called renal osteodystrophy. Renal means kidney, osteo means bone, and dystrophy means it grows incorrectly. The kidneys begin to calcify and harden from the inside. Number 3, NSAIDs, over-the-counter painkillers. NSAIDs are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. It's not really food, of course, I know, but I had to include it in this list because many people use them, and you need to know something about them. These are drugs like ibuprofen and naproxen, plus many other similar drugs on the market. They block a chemical messenger called prostaglandin, and simultaneously they block and reduce blood flow to the kidneys. Here's what we need to understand about kidneys. They receive more blood per unit of tissue than any other body organ. They comprise 1% of body weight and receive 20% of total cardiac output that the heart pumps. The kidneys need all this blood, all this oxygen to do their job. They're incredibly hard-working. But if we reduce blood flow, they still have to perform the same workload. We won't have fewer toxins, less waste in the body simply because we reduce blood flow. But now they must do the same work with less oxygen. We create a huge burden on the kidneys. The tissues are heavily stressed. We increase toxin concentration because the kidneys can't cope. Consequently, the kidneys are damaged and die. If this happens more frequently than occasional use, irreversible tissue loss may occur. We can get irreversible loss of filtering capability. Number 2, vegetable oils. That's essentially everything sold in stores. Everything mass-produced and sold as vegetable oil. It can be corn, canola, soy. The reason they're harmful isn't that the food from which they're made is so terrible. Maybe it's not the best food, but it's not exactly bad food when it grows. It's in how it's processed. It's a very, very aggressive environment. It's like an industrial product. Very high temperatures are used in the processing, very high pressure, and even solvents like acetone to extract the last oil from these seeds, grains, or beans they use. Eventually, these lipids and byproducts oxidize, and the final product produces something called aldehydes. These aldehydes shouldn't be in food. They're directly toxic to kidney cells. They damage the glomeruli, which are the smallest functional units of the kidneys, and scar the tubules. Over time, the more we eat these aldehydes, the more they can destroy filtration membranes. Overall, they cause great harm to the kidneys. Number 1, sugar, the worst offender. The most harmful product for your kidneys is sugar, any of its derivatives, and any products containing it. We're talking about drinks, sweetened beverages, candies, sweet coffee drinks, cookies, cakes, desserts, and so on. It's not just white table sugar, what we call sucrose. It's also high fructose corn syrup. But even in products like agave, which is sometimes proclaimed as healthy food because it has a low glycemic index, fructose is the worst part of sugar. In agave, it's sometimes up to 80%. So agave is like extremely high fructose corn syrup, except it may not be made from corn, but it contains lots of fructose. Even in products like honey, honey also has lots of fructose. When it comes to these, it's all about quantity. If you have healthy metabolism and you eat a teaspoon of honey, it won't kill your kidneys. But if you consume these things to the extent that they disrupt your metabolic health, your ability to process energy, then any of them can become a huge problem. Many people think sugar is just bad because it raises blood sugar levels and disrupts your metabolism and blood sugar level and causes insulin resistance. But the worst thing about sugar is actually fructose. Ordinary sucrose, table sugar, contains 50% fructose, 50% glucose. But these others may actually contain even more fructose. Fructose goes straight into the liver. Glucose and most types of energy can be processed by almost every body cell. But fructose can only be processed by the liver. When the liver handles it, it uses lots of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. That's our energy currency. Fructose causes ATP breakdown. Adenosine, which is a component at the base of adenosine triphosphate, actually contains nitrogen, which turns into uric acid. Uric acid causes many kidney problems because it's a crystal. It's very aggressive, sharp, and abrasive. Most people don't think about this because they associate uric acid with proteins, and sugar contains no protein, but it breaks down ATP, and ATP contains this adenosine with nitrogen. Sugar, especially fructose, is one of the fastest and most significant methods of producing and increasing uric acid levels. This uric acid reaches the kidneys and must be eliminated through them. As I mentioned, it's very abrasive. It can cause stone formation, it can cause joint pain, and it causes most kidney damage that leads to scarring and irreversible changes. If you found this information valuable, you'll appreciate other content as well. If you truly want to improve your health and understand how the body really works, be sure to subscribe, click the bell, and enable all notifications so you don't miss vital information. Dr. John Smith, with 25 years of medical experience.